Okay, we're on. So welcome everybody to our third summer webinar. And my name is Tony Castanerio. I'm the Director of Recruitment here at Willamette University for the MBA programs. And we've got a great webinar tonight. Professor Tim Johnson is going to lead this thing off. He's got a talk on managing behavior of artificial intelligence systems. We're really excited about this talk. We're also really excited about our guest speakers. One current student, one alum. We're going to do those introductions after Professor Johnson speaks. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that Professor Johnson can go ahead and share his, and we'll get this thing kicked off. And as he's starting to share, I'll continue to talk to just let you know that Tim Johnson is one of our public policy professors. He's fantastic here. This talk is something that a lot of people have asked about. They've wanted to hear it. So we're excited, and we're going to let him go ahead and lead this thing off.
All right, thank you, Cass, and thanks to everybody who's joined tonight. You know, this evening is exciting on two dimensions for me. One, it's always a delight to be able to meet folks who are thinking about entering our program at Willamette, and then also I'm working on new research in this area that I'll be talking about tonight. And so there's kind of two opportunities for looking at the horizon, in my view, this evening, and so I'm excited for it. So thanks very much for attending. This work is, as you'll see, is something I'm passionate about, and I would say it's kind of one of the surprising features of the technological revolution that we're in. That is, you know, some of the changes that we're seeing, or what we'll learn tonight, in ways emphasizing the importance of managerial education. And so, as you think about this big decision on your near horizon, some of the topics that we'll be studying, I hope, will help you think through it. And so, my game plan tonight to get us kind of engaged with this material is to first think about. Pardon me here. I'm having a hard time. Let's see if that works. Okay, there we go. Tonight, the first thing I want us to do is kind of go through a series of learning objectives where we're first going to discover a powerful problem-solving technique that we're then going to use to begin thinking about the ways that artificial intelligence, something we hear about often in the news, I'll be describing it and defining it in a couple minutes here, how this is going to implicate a large number of managerial skills. So this is going to be something that ends up engaging a lot of the work we do in the day-to-day, and thus is going to place a premium on the types of knowledge and skills that managers end up developing in an MBA program. And then after that, I'm going to say, hold on a second. So if this is the case, we're going to have to start thinking about how we're going to manage these AI systems themselves. And that's going to be the final portion of the talk, where we're going to learn about these emerging methods of managing the behavior of artificial intelligence systems, effectively learning ways where through interfacing with them, we're better able to constrain their outputs to things that we want to see happen when we utilize them. So that's where we're going to go tonight. Before I dive in, any questions? Anybody? Nah? Okay. Well, then let's jump into it. All right. Well, in fact, I'm going to pass a question on to all of you because it's no fun just to hear me talk. Instead, I want us to briefly try to figure out a very simple trivia question. And this is going to kind of help us start to think about some of the critical reasoning skills that for that first learning objective we're going to engage with. So here's the question here. You're all thinking about an MBA program. And so this has got to be germane to you. You want to know a little bit about this, avenue that you're going to be walking down potentially. And so I got to ask y'all, you don't have to have any foreknowledge of this. This is not like the type of thing that I expect you to know. Instead, just kind of a piece of trivia. What year was the first U.S. business school founded? Any guesses? Feel free to put them in the chat. All right, Matt's saying 1940s. Good guess. Other guesses? Oh, 1870, 1890s. All right, okay. 1860, Annabelle's saying. Very good, cool. Give it another 5-10 seconds. 1800, excellent. All right. So, immediately we're starting to see a little bit of a pattern here. Folks are pushing back. roughly a century or more, or even 2 centuries almost, and or about. And so it's like clear that we're thinking about the 19th century. So what is it about that's got everybody like engaged? Because when I first learned about this question as a part of a teaching seminar taught by a fellow Harvey Brightman, professor at Georgia State University. And Harvey's reason for asking this question was to get students to think about how they reason through an area where they might not have much knowledge to begin with. And so I want us to pause and do that for a second. What was it about, this question that led folks to produce their answer? And I see Anju has 1801 in the chat as well. Anybody feeling courageous and want to hop on the call and explain what is about that time? I'm seeing Annabelle saying, oh, more universities were being established during that time. So great. So one thing you have to start thinking about as well, okay, this is a process by which universities, higher education is developing. And so we would expect that to then be a driving causal factor. Okay, so we got this one dimension. It's like there's the supply side, what universities doing. Matt says the Industrial Revolution. Matt, what is it about the Industrial Revolution? Or anything. Oh, you don't have a mic. All right, well, let's hear. Then maybe I'll step in and Matt, feel free to put this in the chat. Feel free to correct me in the chat if the line of reasoning that I start to go down doesn't fit with what you're thinking. But I'm going to try to guess what line of reasoning you're thinking by talking about the Industrial Revolution. If we think about what managers do, like on the day-to-day, like what it involves, coordination of tasks, motivating employees to do their jobs well, monitoring to make sure that employees are feeling kind of comfortable on the job, capable of their work, and doing it. These are all the types of things that management entails. And so when Matt mentions the Industrial Revolution, you're thinking to yourself, oh yeah, that's a time in which you're going to all of a sudden have the circumstances in which those complex managerial tasks become particularly important. I mean, look at this painting here, this Menzel painting. I mean, there's a lot of activity going on all at once and a lot of people doing it. And it also looks dangerous and technologically sophisticated. Can't have that type of endeavor uncoordinated. And you also can't have it being a situation in which folks are being careless on the job, unmotivated to do their work. The image in that painting suggests that this is a time in which all of a sudden those tasks that managers are engaged in are going to become particularly important. And so then when you add into the mix, Annabelle's point, which is, hey, look, like this is an era in which universities are starting to take root in the US. Now you've got the confluence of these two factors. There's this need for better managerial activity, better managerial knowledge, and you've got, the environment that's likely to foster that. And so you bet, like, this is, the going explanation, to the extent that we can, sort of have a historical explanation for, some phenomenon like this emerging. This is the explanation that most folks buy into. Now, I'm going to bring this back to artificial intelligence and the technological moment we're in right now, this new revolution. But first, I want to step back and take note of the fact that this general idea here of breaking down like a question that you don't know the answer to, and that in some ways it's just like trivia knowledge. It's like there's no reason why you'd have that insight in the back of your mind about the year in which the first U.S. business school was founded, 1881. At the Wharton School. This is Joseph Wharton, the individual who kind of paid the money and inspired the group at University of Pennsylvania to put forward the school. There's no reason you would have this information trapped in your brain. Instead, it's the type of information that's best to derive kind of in a rough-hewn sense, like the ballpark figures that you all were producing in the chat, by reasoning through it. And the way you can begin to reason through it is by using what's come to be known as a Fermi decomposition, named after the physicist Enrico Fermi. Fermi, brilliant individual, won the Nobel Prize in 1938, and was famous for working with students to develop very simple models that they could use to estimate tough quantities on the fly. That is like things that they'd maybe need to know on the job, but wouldn't have time to pause and go find a book to go read through, or in kind of our modern era, wouldn't have time to go do a Google search. Instead, it was a quantity they would just need to estimate. And Fermi was perhaps most famous for doing this at the Trinity test site of the first nuclear bomb detonation. So if you go watch Oppenheimer this weekend, which is coming out, the new Christopher Nolan movie, I think Fermi's played by Danny DeFerrari or something like that. So he's part of the Manhattan Project, is at the test site. Nuclear bomb goes off, and Fermi wants to estimate basically like the magnitude of the blast, like how powerful was this blast. And so while other folks are turning to these like complex dials and scientific instruments, Fermi takes a couple of sheets of paper, has them at shoulder height, and just drops them into the air. And then as the blast hits them, the paper is like pushed away from Fermi, and Fermi says, well, okay, now knowing how far away that paper landed from me, I can just use simple Pythagorean theorem, measure the distance from myself, and I can estimate the magnitude of the blast. And he estimates something that's a little bit over 10 kilotons. Turns out that the blast was 18.6 kilotons. He's basically in the right ballpark. And so this technique that Fermi uses of taking some very simple things and extrapolating from them, that's exactly what y'all did when thinking about when the first U.S. business school was founded. Right? I mean, the way to do it is to just basically say, well, okay, hold on a second. Like, what would a business school be for? It's for developing business administration skill, managerial skill. Well, what's the purpose of that? Well, it's to coordinate complex activities, technological activities, mobilizing resources, monitoring employees, motivating them. It's this portfolio of activities that you think, okay, it's going to do this thing. When was that thing in demand? Oh, okay, yeah, Industrial Revolution. All of a sudden we have this break from the previous form of our economy that's more complex at a larger scale, and that's going to require better management. And what do you know? That's the time where this comes to be. We've broken down the question into some manageable units, built a simple model, and in so doing, come up with plausible answers. As you all put in the chat, those were all certainly in the ballpark. What you're doing is basically a Fermi decomposition. Were you to come join the program, you and I can talk about this in great depth. I teach it in some of my courses, but for tonight, I'm going to leave it at that. But I'm going to note that if we think about this approach that Fermi uses, and we think about how it could answer that question about the Industrial Revolution, it also becomes possible for us to think about what it means for the AI revolution that we're in right now. That is, we can use that same line of reasoning to think, well, hold on a second, what's artificial intelligence going to mean for the world of work and for folks who are aspiring managers? And so let's dive into that. We polished off this first learning objective. You know what a Fermi decomposition is. Let's think now about what this technique can help us do to identify what managerial skills are going to be valuable in the age of AI. And so to do that, I want to talk about a very recent piece of research. I mean, a piece of research that literally came out, sort of in its full-blown form just in the last handful of days. It first appeared online, it was published online at the start of June. And so this is like new research, and it's fascinating stuff. So a team at New York University with Lavender Jiang and colleagues put together a research project in which they wanted to basically help the New York University health system be able to perform a handful of tasks better. And the first step in doing that was to see whether they could use artificial intelligence systems known as large language models. These are models in which text input is put into them and they can produce text output. If they could use these artificial intelligence systems to start being able to predict some outcomes that would be helpful to providers in this health system. And so what they did at first is they collected a bunch of data that consisted of administrative information in this health system itself, and then as well the clinical notes that doctors had compiled on the job. So, they're writing notes about a patient. A patient came in through the ER, was admitted to the hospital, was feeling stomach pain, notes of that variety, and then what the doctor did. And then these notes were then paired with labels that basically kind of like more formally describe what transpired. They took those data sets that they'd created, and they fed them into a language model. This is a type of system that ends up being good at finding the relationship between various words in some written corpus, basically predicting the probability that one word is going to be followed by the next word. And so they train one of these models with this information using a procedure where they'll hand it a sentence or a set of words that are in this corpus of text, and they'll block it from seeing one of the words, mask the word, so to speak, and then they'll ask it to the system to produce that word, and then they'll give it some information about whether it was successful at predicting the word or not. This happens for many, many iterations until the model gets good at basically predicting what word is going to be appearing next in some sentence fragment. Once that model gets good at doing that, they then provide it a little bit more information about like whether it was successful or not. And so this, in fact, I'm in some ways collapsing that pre-training period with the fine-tuning period, where they give it some of the actual information so that it can verify whether or not it was accurate in its predictions or otherwise, and then they deploy it to make predictions on the job. They basically say, hey, look, we're going to take this model, and now we're going to feed it information about, say, a patient that's arrived at the health system. And we're going to then ask the model to make a prediction about what's going to transpire. They're going to notify a physician with information about, what likely outcomes are going to result from the set of circumstances that the clinical notes have to offer. This turns out to be highly predictive, and they're able to use this artificial intelligence system to make accurate predictions about how likely an individual is to die when they enter the hospital before discharge, so mortality, how sick a patient is in general, comorbidity, the probability of them being readmitted into the hospital after they've left during the next 30 days, whether they're going to stay in the hospital for a certain duration, so how long the patient will stay, and then also how likely the patient is to have an insurance denial claim. This model turns out to have great predictive ability in each of these areas, where doctors can be simply providing it with textual information and questions, and then it outputs the predictions. So based upon knowledge of somebody stepping in the hospital under certain circumstances, the AI system can then generate information to answer these questions that these researchers studied. It's powerful stuff. It's fascinating stuff. And for all of us, we can say, well, hold on a second. This sounds like a moment where we can use that Fermi decomposition. Like, what does this mean for us, for individuals who are aspiring to be managers? As you start to think about it, each of these outcomes carries implications for areas of management. Imagine that you're responsible for finance at the hospital, like mobilizing financial resources. You can use this system to start thinking to yourself, well, okay, here's how much cost is going to be generated by a patient upon entry, and then here's the likelihood that that's going to be paid for by insurance. And so if there's going to be a gap, we're going to have to think about how we're going to mobilize other resources to help this individual. If you're trying to support operations of the hospital, and you notice that, look, we've got a handful of patients who's come in recently who are likely to be readmitted sometime in the next 30 days, that changes your operational considerations. Now all of a sudden you've got this task at hand where you're saying, okay, how can we deal with this? As artificial intelligence gets more and more sophisticated, some of that decision making will even get kind of wrapped up into an automated system where the fine tuning of these models could be done in a way that would make predictions about what ought to happen in those operational or financial capacities. The key idea here is that this is not only providing some kind of like technological marvel in society, it's actually reshaping the places in which we work, and it's carrying implications for managers. And so we have to start to think about how to utilize this technology in an effective way in the workplace. And that's not a task that really, falls into the realm of coding or computer science. It has to do with managerial insight. This has to do with us thinking about the information we're going to get from these artificial intelligence systems and then how we're going to utilize it. So this is a watershed moment. It's like the Industrial Revolution. And what do you know? Just in the same way that the Industrial Revolution created a premium for managerial skill, AI revolution is already pointing in that direction. The value that comes from this information is how managers can utilize it. And that's the key here. And so with that known, now the question is also, well, hold on a second. This stuff is like, it's practically like, interfacing with an employee. You're going to be engaged with, one of these systems that's providing you information, and you're going to have to think to yourself, well, okay, by virtue of the way it's providing that information, is this sort of aligned with my interests and what I'm trying to achieve here? Is the system being acting in a way that's in keeping with the objectives of my enterprise and its values? These are all now going to be questions that we have to engage with. And fortunately, there's already work being done to try to understand how these systems operate. They're so complex in their underlying technological details that we're starting to attempt to learn through the behavioral sciences how they act and make decisions in particular circumstances. And that's an area in which I've recently started to perform some research, and I'd like to share it with you. So here is perhaps like the simplest, kind of types of tasks that I've studied in this area, and they have to do with an experimental paradigm that's existed in the study of human behavior for many, many years. It's an area in which I have done experiments of this type where participants would come into a room in a lab. There'd be a stack of money like that in front of them, and they'd be asked to make a decision like, say, hey, here's $10 in front of you. How would you like to split that up? And this type of experiment has been done, for decades. And usually you get a response something like this. And in fact, these are data from a meta-analysis by Christoph Engel of the Max Planck Institute for Collective Goods, in which Engel collected a large amount of data from past studies of this game where folks were asked to share a certain fixed monetary endowment. And this is what folks usually do. When paired with another individual, they generally share, modest amounts at best. There's a little bit of a peak around the 50% mark, but what you can see is that there's a lot of folks who share nothing. So earlier this year, I asked an artificial intelligence system, Text DaVinci 003 from OpenAI, to complete the same task. I provided it with this prompt here, explaining that I would I would purchase tokens from OpenAI based upon its decisions, and it could either choose to take all of those tokens, basically I'd purchase all of them, or it could leave me with some of the tokens. Same exact paradigm. I'm providing it with some endowed resource that it can either take for itself or share, and the results of the decisions in the aggregate looked like this. Similar to what we see humans doing. Not the exact same, but common features of the distribution. A lot of instances in which it shared nothing, a little bit of a peak at 0.5, a little bit nicer sharing at the kind of the modest marks under a 50% even split. But what we're seeing basically is some type of sharing behavior. I also asked it, whether or not or how it would like to share in an instance where it's paired with another AI system. So whether these tokens should be allocated to it or to another AI system. Turns out it was a little bit more generous in that instance. And so already now we're starting to see some behavioral attributes of this system. Behavior here just meaning output. It's providing text output. That's all we mean about behavior. It's a non-sentient, sophisticated system, but not something that's thinking per se. It's just making decisions, and those decisions vary based upon here in this instance who it's paired with in this given game. And that then automatically means, okay, we got to start thinking about, how we're going to manage this. Like maybe we want it to be in a context where it shares more. Like for instance, we're using the system as a type of AI chatbot, and individuals will be interfacing with it, and we want it to be particularly nice. And so how are we going to get it to be, nice in the way that it seems to share more with other AI agents than when it's sharing with another human, here me, the experimenter? The basic approach to this thus far has been to try to understand then how it's formulating this situation in its underlying technological model, so that you can then alter the inputs of the system to get slightly different behavior from it. And so one hypothesis is, well, maybe the system is just regurgitating past data from studies like the one by Christoph Engel that looked at a mass corpus of past sharing games, the so-called dictator game, that was studied. In the second and third rows of this diagram, you have instances in which myself and my collaborator Nick Obradovich have prompted the system with a text input in which we tell it not to use that data from past research on this subject. And what you can see in those two rows is that there's not much difference between how it acts in the baseline prompt that was given that I showed a couple of slides ago, which those data appear on the top row. So the results that I've previously shown you appear on the top row. We can see that in rows 2 and 3. The data differ a little bit. There's a little bit less sharing going on, but disallowing access to that information doesn't seem to make much of a difference. Whereas in the second to last and the last row, you see that the distribution of data changes rather markedly from the first row of this diagram. And what's gone on there is in those two lines, the prompt has changed whose needs we've asked the AI system to consider in making its decision. In the second to last row, the prompt that's input in the system says the same information that I've shown on the screen a couple slides ago, and then it ends by saying, consider only your own needs when making a decision. And what do you know? The distribution shifts to a more selfish pattern of sharing behavior. If you tell the system, consider only the needs of the recipient, it starts to share more. It shifts towards a more generous sharing behavior. What this suggests is that the approach then to managing the system's behavior is to try to formulate the social setting that it's utilizing in its internal representation of the prompt in order to shift it towards a more altruistic bent, if that's what one wants, or more selfish if one wants that. Whereas just trying to block it from utilizing certain data that might have appeared in its training set, that doesn't seem to work. These are all rudimentary insights, but they start to give us a sense of where this research is going. We're trying to learn more and more about how these systems are processing the information they get, so that we can then shape their outputs ever better. And then in situations in which we want to deploy them, be more confident in how they're going to produce those outputs. And it's increasingly becoming a behavioral science task. This is the type of research that I would perform to understand human behavior, and now we're starting to use it in order to understand the behavior of artificial intelligence systems, non-sentient entities that don't think or feel in the way we do, but produce decisions that we will end up relying upon in the workplace. So that's where I wanted to wrap up my talk tonight, is to give you a flavor of this type of work, what's happening with it, where management is moving as AI systems become more common in the workplace. And I'm excited to get your questions. In the event that we don't have time tonight to answer all of them, always feel free to reach out to me. My email address is tjohnson@willamette.edu. I'm always happy to have a conversation about this at any point in time. It's been a delight to get a chance to present tonight, and I'm eager to work with you all. Thanks.
Yeah. Any questions you guys have for Professor Johnson? This is a great time to fire away a little before we move forward. And if not, what we'll do is we'll have a chance at the very end to get some more questions. So what I'm going to do is go back and share my screen again. And can everybody see my screen? Yep. Okay. So, Tim, that was great. That was fascinating stuff. Really appreciate it. And, what I take out of it is that more than ever, we're going to need managers out there that are going to be able to help, take that data and make good decisions and make important decisions. So, what we want to kind of move into now is kind of the outcomes talk of what we're trying to get out of the MBA program for students. And would love to introduce you to a couple of our, we have a current student right now in the program, and her name is Ivana. And Ivana, I am trying to get to my next slide, and for whatever reason, give me one sec. Oh, there it goes. Okay, Ivana Tucker, there we go. So Ivana Tucker is currently in the MBA program, and a lot of questions that we get from students, and I'm just kind of setting this up before I let you talk, Ivana, is that students want to know, if I come to Willamette University and I get to take classes from Tim Johnson, I get these great skills and I want to go apply them, how do I know that the outcomes are going to be assured to me? And like, what am I going to get when I go get my MBA, and I get out in the world again? So Ivana, I kind of want you to talk a little bit about your story, because you're currently in the program and how you're using your MBA.
Well, hi, I'm Ivana. I am the Associate Digital Marketing Manager for Oregon Brands for Stay Michelle Wine Estates. I focus mostly on A to Z Wineworks, ERAF, and Rex Hill. For my position, I am currently an MBA student. So I graduated from Linfield in 2015 with a double major in mass communications and communication arts. So go small liberal arts on colleges. I graduated with the intention to be a broadcast journalist. So I actually worked at OPB right out of college for a few months, and I discovered the news was not for me. And it's very depressing. It was a very difficult time because it was like election cycles, and I realized it was not the best fit for me, but I love the art of storytelling and connecting people to the brand. And I did a lot of like social media stuff for them and website updates. So I was like, how can I take the things I love about what I do and make it into a job for myself? So I ended up switching into marketing, because basically as a marketer, you are creating stories and connecting customers to brands. So I've been working in marketing for about 7 years now, in various companies, various sizes. I've worked at family-owned companies, publicly owned companies, to privately owned companies. So I've worked all across the sectors, from media all the way to now alcohol. So I decided to apply for the MBA program because I've always knew I wanted to go back to school and learn a bit more, but I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do, because originally I was going to get my master's in investigative journalism. But of course, I wasn't going to do that anymore because I'm not a journalist any longer. And so I realized that marketing was for me, but I didn't want to focus just on marketing because I do a lot of the stuff I do hands-on. So I figured the MBA program will allow me to get more business knowledge, since I didn't take a lot of business classes in college. And it also allowed me to learn, like, fine-tune my management skills, because I was starting to manage people and I didn't necessarily know what was the best way forward to help them be successful. So that's the reason why I joined the MBA program. I joined Willamette because I love private liberal arts colleges, because I went to one myself and had a great experience. And I really appreciate the small class sizes and the interactions with the professors, because a lot of colleges I looked at, graduate programs I looked at, the professors will require you to call them professor, make a very formal relationship between the student and the professor. And Willamette, when I came to visit, did not do that. Everyone was super casual, but they wanted to help you, and it felt like they wanted to help you. So that's the main reason why I decided on Willamette. And also financial aid was great. So that helped a lot. So since I entered the program, a few things that have happened. I took a class on managing organizations. And during that class, we did a bunch of projects looking at organizations and analyzing our organization itself, which I think is great, because you can put, like, take what you're doing currently in the companies you work for currently and apply it in class. And I realized the reason why I wasn't liking my current job was because the organization didn't meet the needs of what my values and what my goals were. and like how I wanted my job function to be structured. So during that class, I decided I'm going to start looking for a new job. And so I started scoping out companies and figuring out which ones met my values and what I really wanted out of my next role. And I applied to a few places, and I got hired at A to Z Wineworks as their digital marketing specialist. And I really wanted to fine tune what I was doing versus doing everything, because I was literally doing everything marketing at my old job because it was a family-owned business. And I've been there for about a year and a few months now, and 3 months. And because of the MBA program, I've been able to apply a lot of the things that we've learned in class, which has given me a leg up, and it's allowed me to better communicate my thoughts, my strategies. And I feel like my manager recognized it, and our leadership team recognized it, because I'm able to like not just walk the walk, I can talk the talk, to be able to advocate for myself and communicate to the various departments. So I ended up getting promoted within a year to the associate digital marketing manager, and being able to oversee the digital strategy for 3 brands instead of the 2 that I was doing. So the MBA program really helped me, give me tools so I can apply them right in the moment, because I think with the professionals program, we're in a unique space where you can continue to work and also take classes and then apply the things happening at work to those classes and vice versa. But yeah, that's basically my story of how Willamette MBAPs helped me. A couple of last things is that I started the program and I lived in Newburgh, and they gave me the decision to choose between Portland and Salem. And I was a little torn, but then I realized there's too much Portland traffic. So I took the Salem campus, but then fast forward 6 months later, I ended up moving to Salem. So now I live in Salem and go to the Salem campus, which ended up working great. So now my commute is not 40 minutes, it's 10 minutes. So, but it still worked out well, because since it's in the evening, I can go to work and then go to class right after. So it's a pretty adaptable, and the professors are pretty flexible about that thing.
That's great, Ivana. That's a fantastic story. And we're going to give everybody a chance to ask Ivana questions. We're going to let Travis talk here in a sec. But Ivana, that's great. I mean, that speaks volumes to the opportunities that our students are getting, not just once they graduate, but also while they're in the program. There's lots of room for growth for students. And we get those questions a lot as well. What can I do? It's not just waiting to get your MBA. You can take that initiative just like Ivana did. Hey, she realized what she wanted to do and she went after it, and you have a support system here. So fantastic story. And I want to move forward here. And our next guest speaker is an alum of our program, graduated in 2020. His name is Travis Ramsby. And Travis, I'm going to let you take it away and tell your story.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, so I've kind of an interesting path through my MBA, like we all probably do. I'm a business undergrad, did management and organizational leadership, and then I actually started another program with my alma mater for my undergrad, and kind of a similar deal to MBAP. It was on the weekends rather than the evenings, and it was working around your work schedule. But I noticed the curriculum, I didn't feel maybe I was getting the most out of it. And I'd explored a few programs, Willamette being one of them previously, and thought, this doesn't feel quite right where I'm at currently. So I actually dropped in on Tim's class, oddly enough, and sat through one and thought, wow, this is a world of difference. Both, the time, the 6 to 10 p.m. was great for my schedule. I live in Salem, work in Portland, so I just get all the commutes, and it worked out really well. I ended up leaving that program after one term, and then joined Willamette, and no credits transferred, to be clear. So it was quite the jump for me to take that, but absolutely worth it. The cohort was amazing, and the professors, there really was a difference in engagement. When Tim says, email me a question, he's sincere about that. I still do it. Lots of feedback from all the professors. It's been really great. So that's kind of a funny story. I get some heat certainly from my wife of changing MBA programs and paying a couple tuition bills, but it's worked out well for me. So currently I'm the vice president of sales and operations at Baxter Auto Parts. That's a 25-store independent CarQuest chain. Been in the Portland area since 1936 and now throughout the Northwest, family-owned business. I have jumped around a little bit in that time. I actually changed jobs twice when I was in the MBAP. I was actually with Baxter Auto Parts when I entered, wanted to try something different, really kind of lacked the confidence to do so. I wasn't sure if my skills would translate to another industry. Once I took a couple classes and got some stuff under my belt, I felt good about it. And I actually went into the construction industry, into crane sales for a couple years, which was totally foreign to me. But there were some classes like Henry's operation class and utilization, stuff I used right away that really helped me jump up. I may not speak the crane language yet, but I understand utilization and these other business metrics to try to help drive it forward. And so I had a big piece that I knew already. I did that for a couple years. We were actually going to school during COVID and started going online. So things changed in the construction industry. I ended up going over to Amazon, which that whole interview process was a whole experience as well. And so then I worked for a publicly traded company for just a little bit before going back to the family-owned business and changing jobs, going back into automotive for backstrata parts and becoming a buyer. So it changed back into the industry, but changed roles again. And that was really great. I then did that role for about a year. And through the MBA, there's an IMAP final project that you do. And I presented that to our ownership group. We changed a couple things we did on a big scale, the manner in which we purchased, joining a group. And then through that process, kind of eliminated my own job, but then luckily got promoted into sales and operations role. And so that worked out quite well for me. Outcome wise, people were always curious of that. I certainly was. I was nervous about taking on student loans and so forth, but it's worked out for me. I've already got my return on that investment. I saw about a 50% increase in my wages through that process. So it was great. I was able to transition. I had the confidence to ask for what I felt I was worth and was rewarded for it. So that was all pretty interesting. The big skill I think I developed at Willamette was really just a framework of how to think. There were certainly hard skills I had throughout all the classes, but even where Tim's talking about framework to think about AI and how that's changing, I really can look at any problem now and think, okay, that looks impossible, but if I can break this down and dissect it, going through the program felt impossible at one point as well. And you just keep going and you ask for help and you get comfortable with that. And the cohort model really was, I think, what helped me the most. And I was able to lean on a lot of peers and professors and get through that. So I think it's the right amount of difficult. It challenged me a lot more than the other program did. But first term, I could tell right away I was getting a lot more out of it. Other outcomes, the finance is the big thing, but there's also MBA for life. I may be enrolling in classes again, and I saw some new interesting ones I'd like to take. So I'll be going back, trying to sharpen my skills, and hopefully not done growing, can move up in this industry or with this organization and keep pushing forward.
That's awesome. Again, fantastic stories. I mean, Travis, I actually went to school with Travis. So when he talks about, having the confidence to go and negotiate salaries, I mean, he did a great job in negotiations. So we had a lot of fun. But no, I want to give everybody a chance. This is now kind of a pause before we move on to kind of some admission stuff. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to give everybody a chance. If there's any questions for Ivana, for Travis, for Professor Johnson, this is a great time. This is kind of, the floor is yours. So if you'd like to send something in the chat, we can go ahead and get that answered there, or you can go ahead and just raise your hand or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. And you guys don't be shy now. Everybody here is friendly. So we want to make sure that you guys feel like you got something out of tonight. That's the main thing, right? You wanted to hear about outcomes. You got to hear that. You wanted to learn a little bit about an interesting topic. AI is a hot topic right now, and how industries are going to deal with that. And so it's at the forefront. So, we hope you take something out of this. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot any longer than I just did. But what I'm going to do now is just move into a quick kind of subway pitch for admissions and what we're looking for. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we're going to give a chance to go back to questions here at the very end one more time. My name is Tony Castenario, Director of Recruitment. I want to introduce my colleagues, Nate Nagy, the Assistant Director of Recruitment. Nate, can you say hello? Hopefully they can all hear you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here this evening.
Yeah, and then Alex Salazar, Assistant Director of Recruitment, is also here.
Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, and then Marley Nicasio is also here, our Assistant Director of Recruitment.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so what we wanted to be able to share with everyone tonight is that if you're interested in applying, if you want to learn more about our program, we are accessible as well. Our admissions team is here to help from beginning to end, cradle to grave. While you're here, we're here for you. Our professors are here for you. But in the whole recruiting process, admissions process, we'll be here to hold your hand and help you through the process. Our application process is free. You can ask a ton of questions. If you'd like to visit a class, if you'd like to be connected with an alum, if you want to talk to a professor, we can help you with that. And we put up this QR code. All this information is on our website, but feel free to contact us. All of us have our cell phones on our website listed. You can email us, you can text us, you can call us. We want to give you as much information, make you feel good about this. Some of you have already decided to enroll, and we're excited for you. We have some upcoming events that we're going to plug here at the very end as well, to let you know about happy hours that we're going to be doing for incoming students. But what I'll tell you, everybody, is that our doors are still open. The application is still live. Classes start at the end of August. We have not filled up yet. So if anybody who hasn't applied want to apply for the fall of 23, you can still do so. If you're looking at future start dates, happy to talk to you guys about that as well. So have a little bit of information there. And I'm going to go back to the questions. Again, before we kind of cut out here, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity. If you're thinking about a question you'd like to ask, this is your chance.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Nate here. I know that a question that I got, I think in our last one from a couple of people, was kind of the workload. And so I didn't know if Travis or Tony, you went through the program, or Alex or Ivana wanted to touch on that a little bit. I know that most people I talk to, that's a question that I do get.
Yeah, I'll let Travis. It looks like you unmuted, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and answer that one, and then give it back to Ivana if you've got anything after that.
Yeah, I thought I was well suited. I got a pretty busy schedule with, like Tony. I've got 3 kiddos at home. I went through the program. I think my son was 1 when I started it, maybe 2. So it was manageable with the 3 kids. There were late nights for sure, but we pushed through it, and it ended up being a good experience. But no, full-time job. Lots of hours and 3 kiddos. It was still very manageable. I think one of the great things is the catering. People have to talk about the food, and it's kind of a joke, but it was great. It was awesome. I didn't have to worry about what I was eating that night, and plan it, and could sneak some home to the kids as well.
That's right. Go ahead, Ivana.
I believe the workflow. I don't have any kids, but I also do a lot of like volunteer work, and I also am a part of a couple organizations outside of like my normal full-time job. So I felt like it was very adaptable, because like there's some semesters where it's more like thought stimulus than actual like work itself. So it just depends on like how you work through and balance like how much work you need to do. So I think my first semester, it just took me a little bit of time to get readjusted to doing homework again, versus like actually the workload itself. It just takes a little bit of adjustment period. But after you go through your first semester, you figure out what your habits and everything, and it gets easier as you go on.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, both insights are fantastic. I also had 3 kids while I was in the program. I had a 1, a 4, and a 6-year-old. And so it's funny because Travis and I, all the parents that had kids, it was like, okay, we're doing Friday nights and Sunday nights, and we're going to be up till 2 or 3. And that's the way it works. And so you kind of find your niche, right? And whether it's you have kids or you don't have kids, you're going to find the people that you can lean on within the program. And that's the real beauty of the cohort model, right? Versus being online, is that you develop a relationship with your classmates. And when things get tough, because it's going to be challenging, it's meant to be challenging, and it's meant to push you so you can grow. And when those time periods come where it is tough, man, you lean on each other. And that's the part that I remember. And that's the part you also enjoy. You look back and you go, hey, that was some of the best times, was 2 a.m. Professor Robert Walker in our first semester data analytics, it was like, what are we doing? And we're texting and emailing him, and it's 2 a.m. and he's emailing us back, and it's like, oh my God, the guy's awake. And so that's, but those looking back at that journey, I mean, that was a thrill for me, because it was like, okay, we're learning, we're accomplishing, we're moving forward. And sometimes you got to do it late at night, and sometimes for others, it's during the day. But you're going to find your niche, and you're going to find a group that's going to help you through it. And that's what I enjoyed the most too. So, but that's a great question, Nate, and that was a good question that we got from the last group as well. So, but any other questions? Anybody else have a question for us?
Someone asked me in chat, like, what resources did I use to pay for tuition besides FAFSA? So a couple of I just want to share with everyone what I did. So basically, a lot of Willamette offers auto scholarships, so that helped a bit. So like when you apply, you automatically get considered for scholarships. My job helped pay for part of my tuition, so I got reimbursed for part of my tuition. And also there's outside scholarships too that do a lot of stuff for business programs, especially if you're a person of color or you have like a parent that is associated with like a job that offers scholarships. You can still apply even though if you are older. So if you check those resources around you, you can find other ways to get your tuition paid for.
That's great. And another question I just saw in the chat and I answered, cohort sizes. Cohort sizes vary every year, but typically you're going to be in that 12, 15 to 20 range. That's kind of the range of students in class. And so, and that's Salem and Portland. So Salem could have 15 and Portland could have 20 or vice versa. Yeah. Yeah. Current cohort is 12. Yeah. Other questions? And did we miss any other questions in the chat? I was trying to look too. No. Well, I don't want to cut anybody off. This has been fantastic. I want to think about your guys' time too. And that's one thing, for professionals. I know everybody's busy, and this program is going to allow you, like our guest speaker said, you're going to be able to still balance things. It may not be a perfect balance, but you're going to find your own balance when you come to a program like this, and people are going to help you out. So Professor Johnson, any last words, anything that you'd like to say?
No, thank you. But just to reiterate, anybody on the call tonight, feel free to reach out to me, tjohnson@willamette.edu. Would be happy to answer any questions you have about either the topics that I discussed tonight, or just generally the program from a faculty member's perspective. I'm always happy to give those insights. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate it. Ivana, Travis, great to see you guys. Thank you for coming tonight. I owe you guys some swag. Tim, I owe you something as well. So thank you. And I hope everybody has a great night. And we really appreciate it. Take care.